and sometimes people get trampled all along the way. I'm gonna say the voice demo that didn't work was designed by Andy Hertzfeld. Steve. Do it, Andy!
I think that Steve genuinely believed that the things that he did got the best out of the people who were working for him. But I think that some of his behavior didn't have anything to do with this is how I'm going to get the best out of people. I think it was his personality.
His public persona is he's very likable. If you just saw him at the presentations, you'd be like, oh, the CEO of Apple's like this affable, funny genius. And he seemed to have that.
This time, we used actual mice.
We're opening the house in 10 minutes, Stephen.
That's Steve Wozniak sitting out there.
Without Woz, there would be no Apple. Because when people talk about big Apple products, they talk about the iPhone and the Mac.
The Apple II team has my affection, but I'm not loving up a 7-year-old product at the Mac launch.
The Apple II is the only reason that the whole company was able to sustain itself.
So here's your chance. Acknowledge that something good happened that you weren't in the room for.
No.
Steve.
That frustration is a big part of the movie. You can't write code. You're not an engineer. You're not a designer. You can't put a hammer to a nail. What do you do?
I play the orchestra.
This movie is 3 scenes. They all take place backstage before 3 product launches. In those 3 scenes, all these conflicts that he has in his life get played out.
And if you keep alienating people for no reason, there's going to be no one left for it to say hello to.
Not for no reason. We blow this and IBM will own the next 50 years like a Batman villain.
There's a musicality to all the great writers. And once you find the music that Aaron has written in there, it just sings. My job is to make a recommendation to the board.
Recommend that we drop the price and double the marketing budget.
I can't.
Well, what are you gonna do? Recommend that we kill the Mac?
I already have, Steve.
One of the extraordinary things about the language is the rhythm of it, is the propulsion of it. This is a proper poet, really, writing.
You have to tell me why it's so important for it to say hello.
See how this reminds you of a friendly face? It's warm, and it's playful, and it needs to say hello.
We're all used to mixing a few words around to make them feel a little bit more comfortable, but Aaron Sorkin writes it in a way that does sound as though these characters are coming up with these thoughts in that moment. You have to tell me the plan because I don't know. You're walking around like you've got can't lose cards.
The plan will reveal itself to you when you're ready to see it.
You try to combine so much information about someone's life, of which there is so much information. I think he does such an amazing job of making it human, funny. It covers so much ground.
He imagines a near future where Apple needs your OS and has to buy next, and you come back as CEO.
Aaron uses language to propel this man and everybody around him forward, you know, ferociously, brilliantly. It's beautiful.
I know schools aren't gonna buy a $13,000 dictionary with good speakers. You know I know that.
This is my interpretation of a complicated man and his complicated relationships, and then it becomes Danny's interpretation, Michael's interpretation, everyone's.
You've been dragging your feet on the next OS so you can figure out what Apple's gonna need.
Even if that were true, doesn't sound that diabolical to me.
Excuse me, can I just see you pop back here, a bit of that, guys? Yeah.
Of course, someone like Danny Boyle comes along and takes something play-like, and he ended up making something visually fascinating.
I had a very, very strong impression of how to make the film. So rather than shoot a scene there, a scene there, a scene there from the 3 different parts, we just concentrated on the one part at one time. And it allowed you to commit yourself to that one act. It's very rare on film that you could ever film in sequence.
Hey, Mark.
Action!
Danny is, without doubt, the most positive and energetic director that I've ever worked with. I'll just also say about Danny as well, is he comes from a history of theatre.
Yeah, there you go, that kind of thing. Up and down, it'll be lovely.
I think he injects that same positivity and energy in his visual storytelling.
You feel as though he really wants you to be there and he wants to know what you think and he wants you to absolutely take ownership of the role that you're playing.
You want to work on something beautiful and then you want to give it to people.